Right, I think we're okay. I do believe we're on. Okay. Well, if you're joining me, thank you for joining me. There are 11 minutes to go, just less than 11 minutes before the Atheist Experience starts. And one of the things that I'd like to mention just before we kind of get to it is please remember that the basis of this kind of like following the live stream is that I can pause it and it gives us an opportunity to talk about any issues that come up. So if you're listening to this and you're looking at the live chat, if you want to make any comments, then please do so, not a problem. I can also carry on with those afterwards by, you know, dealing with it through the comments. But I want to make a brief comment about I've created something to explain my view about specialist knowledge, about the fact that when people phone into these shows, it's really important that they realize that if you're going to talk about something and and it's a specialist area like science can be, then you've got to have the knowledge to back it up. You can't just do it based on the fact that you've read a book. So I'm going to start that now, and let's see where we go with it. I'm going to Okay, I'm going to move this across to here so we can all see it. I'm going to get rid of me because I'm surplus. There we go. And let's do this. Okay, I'd like to make a brief point about the issue of knowledge, of concentrated knowledge, of deep knowledge, and its importance, and kind of what it brings to the table when you have someone who has that kind of knowledge. I've been studying physics for, 38 years. And in fact, to be truthful, it's probably longer than that. I've been teaching for 38 years. I've probably been choosing to study physics rather than have it forced upon me as a student, as a young student. 42 years? 4 decades. That's a lot of time, effort, and focus, and I care about that subject. I care about pouring myself into it, etc., etc. Okay, that has to mean something. That knowledge base has to mean something. And when I listen to people who phone in to the Atheist Experience or call in, you know, through the web or whatever they're doing, I am frequently met with the idea that this person doesn't know what they're talking about. Now, how can that be? How can they go on to a show that might be listened to by hundreds or thousands or hundreds of thousands of people, and they've got the kind of you know, they've got the sense, the presence to feel, okay, I can do this, I can say this to tens, thousands, hundreds of thousands of people. What is it? And sometimes these people that phone in and start talking about, for example, the Second Law of Thermodynamics, which seems to be one that theists love to kind of bring up as this is proof that science is rubbish, that God has to be, etc., etc. It's because they've read a popular book written for the public. It's been simplified to make sure that people kind of have a chance of understanding it. And they feel that they're now empowered to go into the world and preach the good news of science. And it just doesn't work that way. And I think one of the people that explains this really nicely is Sam Harris. If you don't know Sam Harris, you need to look him up. I will put a link in the details for this post. He has a TED Talk, and the TED Talk is about whether science has the ability to address or answer moral questions. I'd like to play you just a snippet to hopefully pass over the point that I'm trying to make, because to be honest, Sam Harris makes the point far better than I do.
Well, one thing to notice is that we do something different when talking about morality, especially secular academic scientist types. When talking about morality, we value differences of opinion in a way that we don't in any other area of our lives. So, for instance, the Dalai Lama gets up every morning meditating on compassion, and he thinks that helping other human beings is an integral component of human happiness. You know, on the other hand, we have someone like Ted Bundy. Ted Bundy was very fond of abducting and raping and torturing and killing young women. Okay, so we appear to have a genuine difference of opinion about how to profitably use one's time. There's nothing that one should be able to say to the other that should persuade the other. Now notice that we don't do this in science. On the left you have Edward Witten. He's a string theorist. If you ask the smartest physicists around, who's the smartest physicist around, in my experience, half of them will say Ed Witten. The other half will tell you they don't like the question. So, what would happen if I showed up at a physics conference and said string theory is bogus? You know, it doesn't resonate with me, it's not how I choose to view the universe at the smallest scale, I'm not a fan. Okay, well, nothing would happen because I'm not a physicist. I don't understand string theory. I'm the Ted Bundy of string theory. Okay? I wouldn't want to belong to any string theory club that would have me as a member. Okay? But this is just the point. Okay? Whenever we are talking about facts, certain opinions must be excluded. That is what it is to have a domain of expertise. That is what it is for knowledge to count.
And that's the point I'm trying to make. If you have an expertise, it means that your word counts for more than someone that doesn't have an expertise in that area. When someone starts talking about science, when someone phones up the Atheist Experience or Talk Heathen or whatever it is, and they start talking about science, about the fact that the laws of physics do or don't prove or show this, normally they have no understanding of what the word proof means, which is a big deal. They're normally basing it on the fact that, one, they're not a scientist, two, they have done no serious research that has taken decades and decades of painstaking effort to get to that point, and three, they've read a book. And frankly, that's just simply not acceptable. And we mustn't allow it to be acceptable. There's nothing wrong with people having an opinion, but opinions do not carry equal weights. Sadly, that's just the truth. Okay, so that's basically one of the main points I wanted to get over this week before we start the Atheist Experience, which should be starting in a few moments. If any of you think that I'm kind of right or I'm wrong, or you want to chip into this, or you want to have a discussion about this, about the issue of, you know, the importance of knowledge, of how this does effectively separate society into brackets, then by all means chip into the comments, and I'm very, very happy to discuss these issues with you. Physics is really important in my life. It is not just a thing that I study. Physics, it has become part of my life. It is one of the three most important things in my life, and I am extremely happy that it is. Physics has changed the way that I think. It's changed the way that I live my life. It's changed the way that I view my life, and that doesn't just happen like that. It happens because you experience it, you push into it, you delve into it, you dig deeper, and you spend decades working on it. And I'm really happy that I've done that. So anyway, let's get on to the Atheist Experience. And let's see, hopefully, if we can chip in to any of the points that are going to get raised this week. What I will do as we go into the program is I will frequently pause. If somebody says something that I think I can add to, then I'll add to it. And it's hopefully meant to help people understand what's going on, or maybe a slightly different view or a different perspective. If they start talking about science, then I'll chip in, but my point is not to try and kind of like hear my own voice here. The aim of these particular sessions are not to try and rip off the Atheist Experience's live stream. They can do that. They don't need me to live stream for them. The point is that other people will watch these things, the Atheist Experience, and when people start talking about issues to do with science, they may not know what it's about. And I would like to use this as a teaching experience for anybody that's interested. And also, again, chip in the chat if you feel you wish to, or put comments in after the video has been posted. I'm very happy to answer as best I can any comments that come up, or maybe we can create a discourse, an interaction that can go on for a considerable period of time. I'm completely happy with that. So let's get into the show. Right, okay. So we're going to get into the show. Let me get rid of VLC. VLC being an amazing video player. It doesn't seem to mind what codecs are required, just plays them. Absolutely amazing. So I really like that. I use it quite a lot. And the Atheist Experience, as you can see, it's in the UK. It's 22:29. So basically, we're less than a minute away from 10:30 in the evening. The weather is outrageously good. It's hot, and it's been Springfield skies today. Blue, white, fluffy clouds. Absolutely incredible. Very unusual for the UK. So we enjoy it while we can. And here we go with the Atheist Experience, which I think is actually about to start. Come on, guys, let's do it. I don't need the top stories of the day. I think the top stories of the day are whatever they are, and we can look at those on BBC, etc., etc. Okay, well, I'm backpedaling here slightly because it is 10:30 and it hasn't started yet. I'll remind you that reading is really important. So if any of you aren't into reading and you're watching this, get into reading. Reading is really important. Doesn't matter what it is. Read anything. Read newspapers, read comics, read magazines, read books, read technical books, read reading books, anything you want, just read. Reading is stunningly good. Improves your vocabulary, improves your language skills across the whole kind of spectrum of whatever we want to refer to those skills as. It's really important. Anybody that's thinking, well, you know, I don't really have a book on the go at the moment, and you want a fantasy novel type book, sword and sorcery, because I like Dungeons and Dragons, as you can see with the books behind me, then Raymond E. Feist, absolutely brilliant. And the other one that I think I mentioned last week, Stephen King, who I really, really, really like. He has a masterful grasp of the English language, if I'm supposed to say that. And here we go with the Atheist Experience. So I'll shut up for a moment. And if it had started then, of course, it would have been like perfect timing, and I would have made a comment about how perfect timing it was.
So you think that you can tell us how to live our lives, never questioning the source from which your moral code derives. You think that suffering is part of some great plan that's been devised.
Well, that is true, though.
Welcome to the Atheist Experience. We are live today. Is Sunday, June 13th, 2021. It's 4:30-ish p.m. Central. I'm Matt Delaney. Joining me this week, Vice Rhino. How you doing, man?
I'm good. How are you?
I am recovering. I've got miscellaneous announcements to get to, and then we'll chit-chat and start taking calls. But thank you to everybody who's tuned in. If you're watching us live on YouTube right now, you'll notice that down below the chat, there's a donation link. You can donate directly there. All that money goes directly to us, doesn't pass go, or Google doesn't collect their $200 or anything like that. But that's one of the best ways that you can support the channel. There's a number of other ways to support the channel, including merchandise, which if you go to bit.ly/AEN merch, you can find there your mouse pads and coffee cups and t-shirts and whatever else. Supplies may not match exactly what I just said.
I'm just going to pause there for a second because I know that Matt and the others, they never mentioned this one, and I don't know why. Maybe it's because they don't want to mention the organization. But if you're in the States and you're watching this and you want another option to help the Atheist Experience, then what you can do is, because the ACA is a charity, you can set up your Amazon account I think they refer to it as Amazon Smile, and basically everything you buy, a proportion then goes to the charity. I donate to a charity dealing with Alzheimer's in the UK, a particularly unpleasant disease, illness, whatever, however you want to refer to it. But you can't do it from overseas. Only people in America can kind of Amazon Smile to the ACA. So if you didn't know that and you want to do that, it's kind of like almost like it's hidden. It just kind of happens. It doesn't cost you anything. That's just Amazon transferring money to the charity. So that would be quite good.
You can also become a member here at YouTube. There's a link available there. For 99 cents a month, you'll get custom emotes and icon thing like that. And at patreon.com/The Atheist Experience is another one. But if you're really just looking for community and you want to interact, there are 2 Facebook groups that we've been promoting. There's the Atheist Experience fan group and the Atheist Experience private fan group. The URLs are listed there on the screen grabs to show you there. And in addition to this program, the Atheist Experience Network, or AEN, is growing and growing, and it is where you will find all of the programs put out by the Atheist Community of Austin. You can go to tiny.cc/AEN podcasts. That's your one-stop destination for all of our shows as audio-only podcasts. So if you're normally watching Atheist Experience, but you aren't familiar with the other shows, go and check it out. You've got Talk Heathen, Secular Sexuality, Truth Wanted, etc. They're all out there. And in between, on Sundays, Talk Heathen airs at 1 o'clock and Atheist Experience at 4:30. But in between those, you'll find new episodes of The Nonprofits recorded on Wednesday with all new people and all new thoughts and all that stuff there at the end of the hall. And as soon as there was a tech issue, I was like, oh, that's it, I quit. But we got it sorted. Last thing to update about is there was a mass shooting in Austin, Texas over the weekend. And I appreciate all the people reaching out. There were no fatalities. I think there were 13 people who were injured. It took place down on 6th Street, which is, I mean, that's just Partyville every weekend. We still don't have details on who did it or what the motivation was or anything else. But I will say that to the best of my knowledge, no one from the ACA was injured at all, and there were no fatalities. So things could have been much, much worse. And I just wanted to thank everybody for their well wishes and concerns and people who reached out. And I was sitting in my recliner with an upset stomach, just watching dumb shit on YouTube. And all of a sudden I started getting messages saying, are you okay? Are you okay? And yes, I am okay. I had no idea what they were talking about. But Vice Rhino, tell everybody who you are, where they can find you. I know the mods have information and there's links in chat, but welcome.
Yeah, thanks. So, yeah, I have a YouTube channel where I deal mostly with young Earth creationism, but I also tackle some other apologetics and the existence of God. I recently put out a video where I conclusively disprove God's existence, at least one very specific iteration of God. So that was fun. That actually got much better reception than I was expecting. Normally, when you put a lot of work into a video, nobody likes it, nobody watches it. But that one actually seems to have struck a chord with people. I also release my videos as a podcast. You can find me using any typical podcast search. Search for Vice Rhino. It'll pop up. But yeah, so that's a lot of fun. Now, I hear that. Now, I'm excited to be here. Because when I started my channel, if you'd have told me that one day I would be hosting the Atheist Experience with Matt Dillahunty, I wouldn't have believed you. But then, if you'd have told me that I would be hosting Matt's 500th episode, that would have taken me completely by surprise. And I hear the crew has something ready to go to celebrate this special event.
Okay.
That is a lot of shows.
Matthew, it appears that you've reached the 500th show. Let's hope you get the hang of it soon, hey? I'll never forget the first time I saw you on AXP. I'll keep trying, though. You've changed
Good
so
chunk.
much over that time. Please keep changing until you find a look that we can tolerate. You know, you've taught me so much. If it weren't for you, I'd never have learned how to fast forward YouTube videos or how to mute my headset.
Nice.
You really deserve so much from us, but we will hold our tongues for the sake of courtesy. Congratulations on making it through 16 years and 500 shows. But if you keep mouthing off to me in crew chat, in all seriousness, congratulations and thank you for all that you've done and continue to do for the atheist community all around the world. You are very, very much appreciated.
Hey everybody, Objectively Dan here, and I'm here to roast Matt for his 500th episode of Atheist Experience. Just to give you an idea of how long Matt has been doing this show, the very first episode of Matt Dillahunty on Atheist Experience premiered when I was in 4th grade. I don't know why Matt chooses the site Radiocarbon Dating to know that the Earth is over 6,000 years old when he could just be using his birth certificate. You could probably hang up on a telemarketer once a day, every day for the rest of your life, and still not hang up as many times as Matt has hung up on people on the show. And you know, if I'm really thinking about it, Matt might be the only person that's been featured on public access television that has yet to have a Tim and Eric sketch based off of him. But the truth is, I probably wouldn't be here, and a lot of people at the Atheist Community of Austin wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Matt's tireless contributions to the atheist community. So Matt, thank you.
Hey Matt, I know I'm supposed to be making fun of you and we're doing a roast or whatever, but I start to feel really guilty because you've been so generous with your time coming on and appearing on Secular Sexuality and helping us to get the word out about that show. And then I realized that you being on a sex show is actually better than any joke I could write, so here we are.
Amen.
All right, everybody's talking about this. The viewers are talking about this. People on your Twitch channel are talking about it. People on my Twitch channel are talking about it. And quite frankly, I'm sick of you dodging me because you know that I can destroy your career because you cannot possibly refute this. But now that I have you pinned down and you're stuck and you have to come up with an answer, I don't think you can refute this, so I'll just give it to you right now. You ready? You ready for this?
I'm ready.
Pawn to e4.
So I was asked to roast my insufferable know-it-all boyfriend, Matt Dillahunty. And I gotta tell you guys, it's not difficult to roast Matt because have you seen how pale he is? I can confirm that he uses sunblock rated for vampires just to turn on his studio lights, which I can also confirm is 20. Honey, maybe get out of your lair a little more often and stop eating trolls for lunch because I know they're satisfying for you, but they're without substance. Love you. Keep being awesome.
Nice comment.
I'm not saying that Matt's a god, like I don't believe in gods. But in many ways, Matt is like the great prophet, come to rescue humankind. And for that reason, and because I am allegiant to this idea, I have founded Dillahuntyism. Now, if you want to join me, my fellow Dillahuntyists, you must take communion. Instead of communion wine, we have Coke Zero. Always keep that on tap. I don't have any actual communion wafers. I do have some Triscuits and a little cookie butter or peanut butter on there, maybe some almond butter jelly for communion. Our communions have a little flair. We have a special sign that it's a hand signal. You start here and then you go down. And this is like symbolic of hanging up on the people during the hang up in the Atheist Experience. I know he just uses the finger, but this doesn't feel like a good group sign, like a good signal. I think you start here and then you go down. So, right. And then you say, Dillahunty. Right? And then you say to me, Dillahunty. And to show you my allegiance to this new religion, as soon as I'm done with this greeting, I'm going down to the barber shop and I'm going full Dillahunty. I honor you, great prophet, and I commit to you my lifelong allegiance. Salute. And Dillahunty.
Absolutely amazing.
Wow. I can't thank you guys enough. That was hilarious. And one of the things that's extra funny for me is Penn wasn't kidding. There's no way he remembers me from the handful of times we've been in the same place. I love that somebody said, "Hey Penn, you want to say something about Matt? Who's that?" Because he did that to me with regard to a friend of mine too. But yeah. Oh wow, thank you guys so much. I don't know for sure if I can commit to another 500 episodes, but we're not quitting today, and I will try to remember to Dillahunty hang up on whatever. Now, you guys,
are the kids going to understand that, like what that means nowadays?
I hope so. And at the end, though, I mean, if all we can do is joke about how old I am and how long I've been doing it, I'll take that. I'll take that. Anyway, thank you guys so much. Yeah, I had no idea it was 500 episodes. I knew it was something in that vicinity, but damn it, we've got callers we need to get to. There are people who are waiting to be to ask Vice Rhino questions and stuff. You ready?
Oh, specifically for me, eh?
Well, I don't know if they're all for you, but we're going to do what we can. I should be able to take today off after 500 episodes, you'd think. But all right, let's try Ulrich in Germany. You're on with Vice Rhino and Matt. How are you?
Hello.
How are you? Oh God, what have I done? I feel so woefully unprepared.
Good start.
Well, we're not prepared either. I mean, I don't know how you can be worried that you're unprepared. We didn't even know you were calling or what you were calling about. So you should definitely have an advantage.
Yeah, well, I was calling about, I'm a great fan of yours. I've been listening to hundreds of your shows, your YouTube videos, and that's why
we'll fix that.
Call in and tell you, hello?
No, I'm sorry. I'm in a jokey mood because I just got roasted. So I just said we'll fix that after you said you were a fan. But go ahead, get to your point. I'll stop interrupting.
Yes, that's what I wanted to explain to you, what you've been doing wrong all these years, and tell you how to do your job, and you're welcome in advance.
Thank you.
No, I was calling in because you make this argument that, because I'm an atheist, and you make this argument that the theists have the burden of proof, whereas the atheists only have to basically point out a lack of evidence. You make this argument about the court case scenario, where the prosecutor has to prove guilt, but the defense attorney only has to prove lack of evidence of guilt, not innocence. But the problem I have with that is, even though technically the defense attorney can get their client off, they may have still ruined their life, because in the court of public opinion, they might still be considered as the guy who might have gotten away with murder or something. And that's why, even though you, as the defense attorney, you can pat yourself on the shoulder and say you've gotten your client off, you might not have done enough, and maybe proving innocence, i.e. disproving God, is the better way to go than just pointing out that there's lack of evidence for God.
Okay, so I'm gonna say a couple things real quick, and then I'm gonna let Vice take it because he just did this. So
I heard
I hang on. I don't disagree with you that it would be better to prove that God doesn't exist. The problem is, if the proposition is unfalsifiable, that's not possible. The burden of proof is always on the individual making a claim, whether it is claiming God exists or claiming God doesn't exist. And if you claim God doesn't exist, you've adopted a burden of proof, and you may or may not be able to meet it. So you can go with the courtroom analogy and say, oh, well, if you didn't prove your innocence, people might still think you're guilty. Yes, that's true. Tough shit. That's the way of reality. If you're not able to prove you're innocent, you just have to deal with that. But I'll let Vice do it because he can prove God doesn't exist.
Yeah. So, I kind of agree. Like, there are so many different God claims out there that to take on the burden of proof and say, no, I am going to prove that no God exists, is like every God you disprove, someone's going to come up and be like, oh, well, what about this one? You'll spend your entire life making arguments about that. So what I recently did was I generally focus on Christianity and the Christian God, specifically young Earth creationism, who they have a penchant for taking the Bible more literally than it probably should be taken. Well, then it definitely should be taken. But so I actually made a video where I went through and I compared, like, okay, this is what the Bible says about who God is, and this is what else the Bible says about who God is, and these two things are incompatible. They're direct opposites. So, like, it says God is love, and then it defines love as being patient and kind and does not boast and is not jealous. And then it says God's name is jealous. He's so jealous that he personally identifies with the quality of jealousy, and that is his name. But love is not jealous, and God is love. So, like, just from that, and the video is 43 minutes long. I went through a whole bunch of examples of that, and I had to cut it off short because there was just so many more. Like, I didn't even touch on Deuteronomy 28, which read the second part of that, like the second 2/3 of that chapter sometime, and tell me that the God who proclaimed that was loving. And it just, but like in general, if somebody says I have a God, it's like, okay, that's nice. Convince me that your God exists. Give me what you've got. And if, like, at the end of the day, if their arguments just are not convincing to you, then they have not met their burden of proof with you. And this is another thing, is that what will convince you is going to be different from person to person. But nobody has the time to spend their entire lives seeking to disprove all these different God claims. So it should be enough to just say, like, okay, well, try and convince me. If you don't bring anything new to the table that I haven't heard a million times before, then I'm just going to remain at my default position of I don't accept your claim.
Yeah, I'm wondering, Ulrich, what do you do if the God that somebody's talking about is one that you can't disprove?
Well, the question is, I mean, when you make the claim of a supreme God, that one you can't actually disprove, because that's actually a negative claim. That's basically the claim that there is a God who doesn't have a God himself. I mean, basically,
that's, hang on. Maybe this is a language issue, but it seems that's a really curious way of defining, to say there's a supreme God as a God that doesn't have a God. But I think what you're describing is the greatest being possible. But how do you prove that God doesn't exist?
Well, for instance, every third caller, somebody calls in and says something can have possibly come from nothing, therefore God. I mean, you've had these calls. And what you usually do is you say, how do you know that? Which is cool, Socratic method, I'm down with that. But
you're not down with that, because I just asked you how you could disprove a particular God, and instead of giving me an answer, you're talking about people calling in to say that something can't come from nothing. I don't care what other people say. I don't care how people are defending their God. You seem to think that you can disprove a maximal God, and I've just wondered how you did it.
Yeah, I'm getting to that. Okay, people ask that, and you say, how do you know something can come from nothing? Whereas I would simply go, what about the entirety of everything? Because what is there other than everything? By definition, there is nothing.
No, but your response isn't a response to the question. If somebody says something can't come from nothing, for you to say, what about the entirety of everything? First of all, that's not saying, how do you explain everything? Is you asking a question. That's you using the Socratic method. It's not you disproving anything at all. And secondly, if somebody says something can't come from nothing, and you say, what about everything? And what if they just say that didn't come from nothing? You would then have to prove that everything did come from nothing in order to be a counter to their argument.
Well, if something is really everything, then there is by definition nothing else. So no matter what everything is it finite, is it infinite, is it eternal, does it have a beginning or an end, does it contain one, zero, or many gods? It doesn't matter. Whatever everything is, it can't have come from anything.
How do you know that?
And that's what I mean. Because if there were anything else, then everything wouldn't have been everything, by the definition of everything.
I don't think your concept of what you are able to disprove is quite as strong as you think it is.
Really?
If somebody, so first of all, what I asked was, how do you disprove the supreme God? And instead, you decided to try to disprove the claim that something can't come from nothing, which is not necessarily the same as there is a God above all others. So you're not even disproving the thing that I asked about, the thing that you said you could disprove. But if I say, if I put my theist hat on and just say something can't come from nothing, and you just say, what about everything? You haven't responded to the argument. You haven't addressed it. You haven't produced anything remotely edifying to show how something could come from nothing.
But everything altogether, everything in existence is something, isn't it?
That's just playing semantics.
But where did it come from?
Therefore, something.
Where did everything come from?
It can't have come from anything, because there is by definition nothing other than everything.
No.
That's just playing semantics, though. I think. Like, isn't that just like the response to that is like, okay, everything that's not God was made by God, and then what was there before everything? There was God. God was the only thing. So that's part. Like, it is now part of everything, and He made everything else. Like, this objection seems to be specific to the cosmological argument, which is the like, how did everything begin sort of argument. I guess the Kalam version of that, where the like everything that begins to exist has a cause sort of thing. But like, there are much better objections to the cosmological argument than just saying, well, everything definitionally is everything, and so like, what is there that's not part of everything? It just seems like your response is, when they say something can't come from nothing, and your response is basically to just assert that everything has always existed in some form or another. And that's fine. And I suspect that you may be right, but that's not a proof, and it's not an argument, and it's not evidence, and it's not a rebuttal to their position. It's just another assertion.
Well, I didn't say anything about the nature of everything. We don't know what everything is. Just if it's everything, then it can't come from anything. But it's not a...
No. You did just say something about the nature of everything by saying that the person is wrong to say that something can't come from nothing.
Yeah, because everything can't have come from anything.
How do you know that?
Because that's how everything is defined.
No. You don't get to define this away, just like they don't get to define it into existence.
This is a complex cosmological question that you need to break out theoretical physical models of the early universe to figure it out. Like, you can't just appeal to a modern English definition to explain what happened in the pre-Big Bang universe.
If we don't have an explanation.
I'm just going to pause there for a second and just chip in. For those of you who don't know Deuteronomy 28, I'm just going to show you a bit of it, because it's an outrage. Just look at if you fully obey the Lord and your God, and carefully follow all of his commands. It's always a male, isn't it? His commands I give you today, the Lord your God will set you on high above all the nations on earth. And then it goes on to say what will happen if you don't, and there's some pretty outrageous stuff here. The Lord will send on you curses, plague you with diseases, strike you with a wasting disease. It's pretty heavy stuff. Of course, it's Old Testament stuff. There's plenty of awful stuff in the New Testament as well. Of course, let's not forget that. The one thing I would say about this business of everything and nothing, very often people have the wrong idea. I'm going to say this quite quick because I want to get back to the show, but very often people have completely the wrong idea of what we mean by the word nothing. And this is now talking as a physicist. People think that the Big Bang, for example, the moment of creation of the universe, which we still don't understand, that the actual moment of creation disobeys, breaks all of our laws of physics, as far as we know. But people think that the Big Bang was this idea that there was empty space, just like infinite empty space, and then all of a sudden, at some point, wham, the universe came into existence, kind of filled up the empty space. That's not what the Big Bang is referring to. The idea is that before the Big Bang, there was nothing. There wasn't empty space. There was nothing. Space itself is something. There is, if you like, and there's a couple of books written that are based on this. If you look up Brian Greene and read The Elegant Universe, the first 110 pages, I think it is a really good explanation of the three of the four main areas of physics: classical physics, relativistic physics, and quantum physics. And it's not anything new. It's a really well written chunk of text. But what he's done is he's grabbed kind of all the best ideas about how to explain it, and it comes over really well. So get The Elegant Universe if you're into this sort of thing. Read the first, I think it's 110 pages, because they're really interesting. The rest of the book is just blooming awful. It then goes on to talk about string theory, and you lose all of the scientific rigor for a number of reasons. It's not horrible reasons, and I wouldn't read that, because it's largely a waste of time. But Brian Greene went on to produce or write a second book, which was called The Fabric of the Universe. And it's this idea that everything in the universe is within a fabric, and this fabric is called space-time. And space-time can be warped. It can generate or have ripples generated in it, that kind of thing. And before the Big Bang, there was not empty space. There was nothing. And in the moment of the Big Bang, space-time was created, and energy was created. Energy in the form of electromagnetic radiation. There was no mass at that point. There's far too much energy density for that to have happened. And anyway, I'm not going to bore you now with the process of what we think happened after the Big Bang. The moment of the Big Bang itself is still unknown to us. It's one of the reasons why we are fascinated in theoretical physics with the idea of black holes, because black holes are very, very tiny, which means that for tiny things we need to use quantum physics. But it's very, very heavy, and the gravitational effects are really important. And for that, we have to use relativity, general relativity. And normally, if we have something that's incredibly heavy, physicists use a theory called general relativity to explain it, and it works really well. If it's something that's very, very tiny, we use quantum physics, and quantum physics is ridiculously successful. But the problem with the black hole and the problem with the Big Bang is it incorporates these two ideas. Very, very small, but they're very, very heavy. And so we need a quantum theory of gravity. And at the moment, there are quantum theories of gravity that exist. None of them work. So it's one of the big areas. I'm going to get back to the show now. Yeah, the concept of nothing is a big issue.
For why there's something rather than nothing. And there are plenty of candidates, either there was never nothing, there couldn't be a nothing, or there was something else and it changed form or whatever. We don't have this explanation. And so it would be a mistake for us to assert that we do, just as it is for the theists to assert that they do. It's just go with I don't know and you'll be fine. Your frustration over not being able to disprove something is one that we share. But if the fact is something is unfalsifiable, if a proposition is unfalsifiable, claiming to have falsified it is as big a mistake as anything any theist has ever done.
And if you're not quite sure what that means, there is this thing in science called the falsification criteria. It is rather unkindly reckoned by a number of people to be the basis of science. I don't think that's true, but it's really important in science. And basically, a scientific statement is a statement that can be made that potentially can be falsified. So if the statement, so I could make the statement, the sun will rise in the sky, and we would probably then have to define what I mean by that, of course, because the sun is not the thing going around, it's the earth rotating, but the sun will rise above the horizon and be in my local sky tomorrow. Now that's a statement that I could actually do an experiment to check whether that's true or not. It's not a particularly impressive statement, I don't think, but it is a statement that I could do an experiment with to show whether it's true or not. I'll wait until tomorrow and see whether the sun rises. So if I was to say the sun will always rise, I've then got a bit of a problem, because how do I assess that? How do I do an experiment that will judge that? And the big one, of course, in this is there is a God. That's not a statement that I can prove or disprove. There is no experiment that I can carry out that will prove that God exists or prove that God doesn't exist. So the concept of God, I would argue, is not really a scientific one. So yeah, so I think that people who want to have arguments about religion and science are just silly.
Falsified it is as big a mistake as anything any theist has ever done.
Well,
Hey, I got to move on. I appreciate the call.
Yeah, thanks, Ulrich.
Yep. Cheers. We're going to get on to some other calls here. Muhammad in California, you're on the show with Vice Rhino and Matt. How are you?
Hi, how are you, Matt? Vice?
We're doing well.
Yeah, like, thank you guys for the opportunity. You know, like, Matt, I learned from you a lot. Like, you know, I look up to you and stuff. Like, not like, you know, I know, like, you're going to say, like, oh, don't look up to me too much. Like, I just mean, like, I learned a lot from you, you know? So, like, I appreciate that.
Well, I'm glad. Thanks. How can we help?
Okay, so I was on Truth Wanted, like, not too long ago. And I told Dan and the other one with him, I think his name was Matthew. I told him that I'm not like convinced of Islam anymore, but you know, like I like the criteria that like you guys like say that, you know, like in terms of like knowledge, like you don't know if like a God exists or not, but in terms of like belief, like you could either, you know, believe that the theistic worldview or not. Like you only have those two options. So
okay.
Me, like by default, yeah, like me by default, you know, I'm just like gonna like believe in the theistic worldview. Just like
why would you do that by default?
I just like because like you were saying, like there's only like two options. Either like you believe by default isn't a God until like sufficient evidence.
No. What I'm saying is, here, let's drop the word belief and make this a little easier. Either you are convinced that a God exists or you are not convinced. Why would the default position be I am convinced? Because becoming convinced is the result of, or being convinced is a result of becoming convinced. So it should never be the default position to just accept something. The default position should be to say, I don't yet accept that. I need to be convinced. So then you would have to show what convinced you, right?
Yeah, like exactly. Like, correct me if I'm wrong. You know,
guaranteed.
Like I don't know. Like, yeah. So like in terms of like religion, what's it called? Like I don't know. Like our criteria is that, you know, like I know it doesn't like fit your criteria. Like we accept like the revelation by default instead of like kind of needing you know, I don't want to say like you need empirical evidence, but like yeah, like we just believe it by default. Like we believe in the revelation instead of
you don't believe things by default though. Like an example I've used for the burden of proof in the past is if you tell me you get a dog, then like I don't by default believe that you've gotten a dog. But when you tell me you've gotten a dog, because it's such a mundane claim, I'm probably just going to accept it. But that's still not the default position. I have become convinced that you have a dog through the evidence of you having told me that you got a dog. But when it comes to the God claim, the claim is just so extremely, like, it's just such an extraordinary claim that the idea of just accepting it because somebody said it, it just doesn't, like I need more than just you said there's a God, therefore I'm going to believe you by default. Like that's not the default position. So like does that make sense?
Yeah. So like honestly, like I'm a layman, I don't know that much, but for example in like epistemology, because I've heard this from like Muslims who are more educated than me, they say, for example, like you know, like philosophers, they like they went through epistemology, and like they tried to find like the best criteria of how to get to like reliable knowledge, and they say that, you know, for Muslims, like our epistemology is like, it's grounded in the revelation. Like we get, you know, like we get all our principles, all that from the religion itself. Like we can't, like from
how do you know that the revelation is an accurate revelation? Like there are Christians that receive direct revelation from God, if they're to be believed. There are Hindus that have had direct revelation from various Hindu gods, if they're to be believed. How is a non-believer like me supposed to figure out which one of these revelations is actually the right revelation? They're all claiming to have received direct revelation from God or a God. So how am I supposed to parse it out? Like, I need more than just somebody saying they've had a revelation. Now, I understand, I know a little bit about Islam. My understanding is that the idea is that God will choose who he wants to be Muslims, and like we don't really get a choice in the matter. So if I don't believe, that's just because Allah hasn't given me the revelation yet. I kind of understand that, but at the same time, like if you could just try and put yourself in my shoes for a moment, how am I supposed to figure out which God is supposed to be the real God when they talk to so many different people in so many different ways?
Is that not an interesting idea as well, that Allah will give you the revelation, will let you know that it exists? I find that a very interesting idea, because it suggests, I think, that, and therefore you will worship it. But if there was a God, as per the Quran, or as per the Bible, the Torah, if there was a God and somehow we could be sure that it existed, why does that automatically mean, and therefore we would worship it? Because the things that this God seems to profess are quite vile. And of course the Atheist Experience has discussed all those. I've always found it, if I'm honest, this is a personal point of view, I've always found it really quite bizarre that women are religious, because almost all religions, as far as I can see, are so anti-women. It's unbelievable. There's women are like second-class citizens, and just absolutely bizarre. I don't understand how anybody would accept that. Anyway,
God is supposed to be the real God when they talk to so many different people in so many different ways.
Yeah, like I understand. Like honestly, what you're saying, like it makes sense. You know that, you know, the epistemology of like having like, you know, what like methods are the best to get to reliable knowledge. Like it's, if you use it from like kind of like a critical thinking perspective, like it makes sense that, you know, like there's all these different claims and you know, gods and whatnot. But
hang on, Mohammed.
Yeah.
Hang on. I'm not trying to beat up on you, and I get it. You're nervous. You're new to some of this, but we're tossing around the word epistemology left and right when I'm not even sure we're necessarily talking about the same thing. But all I was asking about was how we go about establishing the default position. So let's say, for example, there are two claims: Allah is real, Allah is not real. Only one of those two claims can be true. And should we believe either of them the instant we hear it without any other consideration? Should one of those be the default position?
I don't know.
Right, now Mohammed needs to be careful here, because what he needs to do is make sure that when this question is asked, that he actually answers as he thinks, rather than trying to think about, you know, what will my religious teacher be telling me I should be saying now. Because if you only ever say things that are based on the fact that this is what some priest or some imam told you, then you're never going to make your own decisions.
I don't know. Like,
so it's a yes or no question, and I'll tell you the answer is no. And we should neither believe the claim Allah is real, nor should we believe the claim Allah is not real by default. No claim should just be accepted by default. Everything needs some sort of evidential foundation. This is why we're talking about epistemology. Is how do you know what you know? Now, what is my default position on God or Allah? Well, my default position is I am not convinced that Allah is real. I'm also not convinced that Allah is not real. Both of those claims would require some convincing and some evidence. As we begin looking at things, you can then build a case for accepting that Allah is real. You can also build a case for accepting that Allah is not real. This is what Vice Rhino was doing the other day by making a case for why it is, I'm going to go ahead and kind of stretch it a bit and say it's not rational to believe in a particular God, or why he specifically does not believe in a particular God, and why he specifically believes this God does not exist. But for any given claim, the default position should not be to accept it. It should be to say, I've been presented with a claim. I will accept it when there is sufficient reason to accept it. Right?
Oh, yeah. Sorry about that. I didn't know like that's how like your position was. Yeah, that's like honestly that's like super logical. Sorry.
I'll just go with just logical. But cool. So here's the thing.
Logic with a cape.
This is why I objected right off the bat, because you said that you believe in Allah by default, and I think that I don't think that's what you meant. I think that what you mean is you believe, and you may not necessarily be able to express exactly what convinced you, but you became convinced at some point. And so I'm wondering what it is that did convince you, and whether you think it should convince anybody else.
So like the main reason why I called is because and like you guys, I'm not like trying to say like, oh yeah, this is like I want to convince you guys, like honestly I want you guys to like teach me, like tell me if these reasons are convincing. So there's basically like like prophecies like claimed by this man named Muhammad, and he makes predictions about the future that like came true. And
are any of them actually specific enough to be like conclusively demonstrated to have either come true or not? Because in my experience, I don't know the Quran as well as I know the Bible, but the Bible, for instance, has a whole lot of things that people say are prophetic, and these prophecies came true, but when you actually read the prophecy, it's so vague that it just, like, anything could be spun to be a fulfillment of that prophecy. So, like, do you have an example of a specific prophecy?
That'd be the best thing. If you can just, let's not go down 25 rabbit holes. Just give us the absolute best example, or one good example of a prophecy that Muhammad made that came true, and then we can talk about it.
Okay, perfect. So this man Muhammad, right? He made a claim that, and he was talking to he's talking to the Muslims, but like the Muslims are like by and large the Arabs, because like those were his companions at that time when he was still alive. So he said basically that there will be a race that will be dominant or like over you, and basically like take over the caliphate. Like they will be dominant over you, and those were the Turks. And he was, and this it could be proven because like this wasn't written like after like the prophecy was fulfilled, because the hadith sciences, they have like, I honestly, I'm not like a scholar in it, so I don't know it that good, but there's like, they have criteria.
This is
Muhammad, I got to stop you. Sure. I got to stop you here, because I don't think you're ready for this, and I'd like for you to call back some other time, because all we want is one prophecy, and we need to know specifically what was said, when it was said, and how we know that it came to fulfillment. I'm going to try something without being specific about any prophecy. I'm going to pretend for a second that instead of what you just said, you said Muhammad predicted 9/11 in great detail. And I'm going to assume that that's correct. Let's assume that there's a prediction that came true. What is the best explanation for how that prediction came true? Is it this is a message from God? Is it somebody has a time machine? Is it this is something that was likely to happen? Is it we made a public prediction and a lot of people were working to make it come true? How do we determine that the fact that somebody said something and it appears to come true means they had some sort of power?
Yeah, so the reason why, like, I would believe it's, like, kind of odd is because, like, it's not that likely to happen is because the Turkish race and, like, historically...
no, you're not listening.
The
I wasn't asking about the thing you said because you didn't give us enough anything specific to go with. I came up with a different one. Doesn't matter what it is. The question is, somebody makes a prediction and it turns out to be right. And how do you know how they knew or if they knew? Because it's possible for someone to make a prediction and not know that it's going to come true, but just be guessing or playing the odds. I mean, I do mentalism on stage that involves making all kinds of predictions, and I'm right almost every time. Does that mean I have special powers?
There's a podcast that I listen to where every year after New Year's they go through, they look at psychic predictions that have been made the year before to see whether or not they came true, and then they make their own predictions, and they're pretty good at like picking things that are likely to like they'll make like 3 predictions, and one of them is like something that they know is likely going to happen, and they make it just vague enough that it kind of works. It's prophecy is one of those things that it's easy to write things that look super specific that you can then figure out how to fulfill them later. And like unless it's like specifically using like dates and names and stuff like that, it's kind of hard to really say that any prophecy is fulfilled. And like that's kind of another thing is that a lot of these old prophecies they don't give names, and like how if they have knowledge of the future, could they not just get something as basic as someone's name? But they don't do that because names are very specific things. So if they give a name, then it's obvious that like, oh, this guy did it and he didn't actually fulfill that, or like he fulfilled the prophecy but he's named the wrong thing, so clearly the prophecy was wrong.
The thing I'm worried about here, Mohammed, is that you're calling in to basically say, hey, I heard some stuff from some Muslims. I don't know the specifics, but I found it compelling. And what do I do with that? And yet you don't have the ability to tell us exactly what you heard, to give us any details to evaluate it. But at the end of the day, I'm willing to say, even if there is a prediction from Muhammad that absolutely came true, we have no way of knowing what the explanation for how he was able to make that prediction. Was it lucky? Maybe. Was it from a god? Maybe. Was it from a time machine? Maybe. Was it something that people were working to make happen? Maybe. It's just, you can't go, wow, somebody said something, this happened, therefore this is the one true prophet of the Almighty God. That is not a rational path from claim to conclusion. It's just not. And so it's absolutely useless for us to sit here and keep talking about prophecy, especially if you don't have anything specific. Does that make sense?
No, yeah, like, of course that makes sense. Like, what you're saying, like, I don't disagree with it. It's like, the only reason it was, like, convincing for me is because, like, if you read his biography, and obviously, like, I know that not all historical accounts are, like, super accurate, but, like, he was, like, a simple man, you know, like, kind of just, like just how, like, farm people are, you know, like, he wasn't, like, he was illiterate. He didn't have, like, all this knowledge, like, he wasn't an educated person, you know? I know that...
I don't see the relevance.
I don't, yeah. First of all, even assuming that's true. So first of all, you're talking about someone's life story that you can't investigate and can't verify. But it's not remotely impressive to say, oh, this is what the person was like, therefore they were the one true prophet of Allah. That's a load of crap. Because all you could do this for anybody. Let's imagine that somebody else was claimed to be the one true prophet of Allah, and this person was better educated. Well, Allah saw to that. All things work according to Allah's plan. And so
Critical thinking
if you begin with this assumption that there is a God and he has a prophet, then whatever prophet other people are going to become convinced of, there's going to be a case to be made for it. But you still have all the work to do. First, prove that there is any God and any prophet from any God. You can't just begin by assuming there's a God and a prophet.
Yeah, like it gets like super complex because you need like a bunch of criteria and stuff. And so like, yeah, like I understand, like I wasn't like here to try to convince you guys. Like I'm here like trying to learn from you guys,
I get it. And that's why I'm not beating you up. I'm not trying to beat you up over any of this. I'm just saying that what you've come with so far is not even the hopes of a beginning of being a compelling case for Muhammad being a prophet or the preferred prophet of any God or any God existing. And so I get why you and other people become convinced by some of this stuff, because when you run up against, let's say, a Muslim that knows all of this way better than you do, somebody who's spent their life studying the history and everything else, it's a daunting prospect for you to challenge them and say, hey, hang on, how do you know that? Hey, hang on, how do you know that? And they're probably not going to answer. It can appear to be rude and all this stuff. And so we are conditioned, all of us as human beings, to generally accept whatever people are telling us. You're doing it right now, by the way. You are listening to me and Weist, and we're making sense. And you do not yet understand everything that we've said, but you're grasping enough of it that it makes sense. And now you're going, wow, yeah, these guys are making sense. I applaud you for asking the questions. I want to caution you against going wherever the wind blows or just agreeing with whoever you listen to last. Instead, go out and do the investigation. And if you ever get to a point with any of this where you recognize that you don't understand something and that you probably can't understand something right now, like I have no way of understanding if somebody's right about quantum mechanics. I just don't. And if I spend a long time studying it, I might be able to get there. But if that's the case, like if you don't have a good enough understanding of history, of Muhammad, of Islam, then you should not believe it. It is a mistake to believe something that you don't understand. It is going back to Stevie Wonder and the song Superstition. When you believe in things that you don't understand and you suffer, superstition ain't the way. And religion is superstition on steroids.
That's it.
Yeah, like honestly, like if I'll be honest, like the thing that like I was kind of like worried about was when they said, for example, like the hadith, like these sayings of Muhammad that, the Turks will like be dominant over you and they'll take the caliphate basically, that they said that these things were compiled centuries before the actual event took place. So like, that's why I was like,
okay.
And
Jews say the same thing about prophecies regarding the Temple Mount and Jerusalem, and Christians say the same thing with regard to prophecies or things that they view as prophecies with regard to Jesus being the one true Messiah. People make all kinds of claims about predictions. The thing is, how do you tell which ones are right? And even if you did, this is the easy thing. Say, okay, here's a prediction, and it definitely came true. Now the next question is, how was that prediction made? Was it lucky? All those questions I asked earlier. But I tell you what, though, Mohammed, call us back sometime, do some more thinking about it, do some more investigating. If you find a better argument or if you find a case for prophecy, by all means, let us know, how it's going, and we'll always do our best to answer it. But I got to move on to some other callers. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
Yeah, thanks for calling.
That's rough. And I just, what is your background with religion? Because for whatever reason, that's something you and I don't think have ever discussed.
I was raised in a very liberal Christian church. It was actually the first church in Canada to perform gay weddings. But I kind of self-fundamentalized because as I thought about it, it was kind of like, well, God is the all-powerful God of the universe. If he has a message for us and it's the Bible, then like, why should we be questioning the Bible? So I kind of like, I took my liberal background and self-fundamentalized, and then I ended up in a Christian high school that it was the Brethren in Christ, which is kind of semi-fundamentalist. Like, I don't think they officially have positions on evolution stuff, but a lot of my teachers were anti-evolution. And then I eventually, I kind of, as I started noticing like little detail, like minor details that just didn't quite seem right in the Bible, and then that started me down a path of doubt that had me sit down and actually try and read the Bible. And by the book of Joshua, I was an atheist.
Yeah, I most people who are listening to this are going to know the bulk of my story, which is that I was brought up primarily Southern Baptist, occasionally going to Pentecostal services for good music like Petra and Carmen, but primarily Southern Baptist, fundamentalist. And I went kind of the opposite direction in that I gradually became more liberal. But the thing was, I did it knowing I didn't have a leg to stand on. I did it knowing that I was imposing my own views over what the Bible actually said. As repugnant as, let's say, Westboro Baptist Church is, their views are biblical. Yeah. I mean, when the Bible says, you know, hey, you can debate about what's to be taken literally and what's not with regard to maybe the Garden of Eden or the process by people might go through to try to date the earth. But when the Bible says, if man lies with a man as he lies with a woman, they've committed an abomination or deserving of death, that's not hyperbole. It's not a metaphor. I mean, by the way, it's also not an instruction for you to necessarily kill them. I recognize saying they're deserving of death isn't, that's how my gay friendly churches say, well, that's up to God whether or not put us to death, not human beings. Human beings are supposed to forgive. But I saw a comment just the other day was from, I don't want to beat anybody up because there's lots of stuff here, but Christianity is not about forgiveness. Christianity is not about humans forgiving humans. Christianity is about God forgiving humans. God chooses who he's going to forgive. Well, there's the whole process of the discipline of exploring soteriology to figure out what's required for salvation, who's going to be saved, etc. But at the end of the day, you can forgive people all day long and go straight to hell under almost every model of Christianity. And similarly, you can go to heaven without ever forgiving anybody. Oddly, I think that from my perspective, as a former Southern Baptist, if you were living a Christ life, like you would be forgiving, but that's not the key behind it. This conversation was about capital punishment, and it was like, how could Christians be in favor of capital punishment? And I'm like, because the Bible is and God is. I mean, it's just there straightforward, but it's so hard. And I appreciate Muhammad calling and asking the questions. Here's something that you can ask yourself, Muhammad, and everybody else as well who may be struggling with this. If there is a God, why is he letting you struggle so? If there is a God who is the one true ruler of the universe, who wants you to know that he exists, whether he's Yahweh, Allah, whoever, why is he letting you struggle? Why isn't he giving you the information? If you are sincerely seeking God and open to the experience, why aren't you getting the experience? Why aren't any of us? Why is it that all I ever hear about is nothing from a God and everything about a God? I hear men constantly telling me what they think about a God, but there's thousands of denominations just within Christianity, and there's a variety of denominations within Islam and Hinduism, and there's so many different views. Isn't it, if there was a God, wouldn't it be grossly immoral for that God to not clear this up? To let people just sit around and flounder? And worse,
what if people kill each other over which God is the right God?
What if he's actually playing favorites, which is what some of them know? Like, I come only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Oh, I'm not going to reveal myself to you or you or you, but I'll let you know and I'll let you know and let you know. That's not the God that most people seem to believe in. For those of you who do believe in it and you think that you're one of the chosen few, cool, congratulations. You're just exactly as special as you think you are. All right, we've got a bunch of other calls to try to get to today. And maybe we'll get an answer because Jeremiah in Arizona has been waiting for a while to tell us about why he believes in a God. So welcome, Jeremiah. You're on with Vice Rhino and Matt.
Hello.
Thank you. I have a couple questions. Who was the person who was just finished speaking prior to you coming on? Was that Matt?
This is Matt speaking right now, so if this is the voice you heard, then yes.
Okay, you were talking about religion, how you were in religion in Canada?
No,
that's me.
No, Vice Rhino was in Canada.
It's Vice Rhino. Yeah, I live in Canada, and we have some fairly liberal churches here.
I was not following who was who. Okay, so you mentioned a lot of things about religion, and I guess the best thing to do would be give you a little bit about my background. I was raised a Catholic. When I got to college, I threw away religion because I couldn't stand it. And when I retired and got myself an iPad and internet, I started looking into it. And I kind of wanted to find God. And after that, I decided, well, I'm going to have to go to church to do that. So I went to many, many churches, probably about 17.
Can I ask why you would have to go to a building in order to find an omnipresent being?
That is an absolutely good question, and it took me 4 years to realize it was a mistake.
Well, can I ask another question real quick?
Okay. Yeah, absolutely.
You said that you got to a point where you kind of wanted to find God.
Yeah.
If you begin with the notion that there's a God for you to find, isn't that biasing your search?
Yeah. Yes, probably the bias came from my upbringing, I'm assuming.
Okay, I just want to be clear.
Bias was. And also that bias probably is what led me to Christian churches instead of like a Muslim church or some other kind of church. Right? Yep. So I went to, like I said, about 17 various Christian churches in numerous states because I travel quite a bit. So, and I learned, like you said, my wife and I both, we like at this point, after many years out of churches now, it's like, whoa, what an eye-opener. That's the place to go if you don't want to find God. I mean, they've got everything upside down. I have to agree with you guys completely. Religion screwed up the world.
Well, if you agreed with us completely, we wouldn't have much to discuss because we're atheists.
I agree with you completely about religion. That's why that's a question I'd like to ask you.
See, the thing is, I'm not just an a-religionist. I'm an atheist. I do not believe that there's a God. So if we can, tell us what God you believe in and why, because that's going to be the way to move forward.
Well, you answered my question, so I don't have to even ask that. So that's very good, because I'm anti-religion, but not anti-God. I'm a religion, but not a God. Okay, I'm theist.
I'm aware. That's why I was wanting you to tell me which God you believe in and why.
Yeah, and I found God after I left the churches, because I used to try to read the Bible and try to figure out what things meant, and I'd bookmark, what are they called, apologetics, and different commentators on religion. And I could find a commentator that would agree with any thought I came up with. And if I found another commentator that didn't, I just discount him. Just believe the one that believed what I believed. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, I'm still.
Yeah, but we still want to know what God you do believe in.
What God do you believe in and why? I don't need all the backstory about all the gods you figured out weren't real. I got those covered.
All that stuff didn't work. So I got my concepts of God from the Bible. I started reading it, and I started realizing that if I'm trying to interpret it on my own, I can't do it. So I had to say, I'm wrong. I can't figure it out. At that point, the Bible became pretty clear. And then I read some verses that said, the Lord will open your eyes once you give up yourself. And I only found that long afterwards. And I looked back and said, that must have been what happened. I understood an overarching theme of the Bible, what I call the big picture. And that big picture is completely encapsulated in the Bible verse where Jesus says, love God with all your heart.
Okay, so do you believe in the God of the Bible?
That's where I got my God from, was the Bible. So I'm going to tell you what my God is.
Okay.
Right now. God, and you have shown me my God since I've been listening to the phone conversation. You are kind and very wonderful and honest to the people you talk to on this station. And my God is honesty.
Okay, but that's not the guide of the Bible, though. Not if you read the Bible.
But that's my God, and that's the God I got out of the Bible, and that is my God. And you said a number of things.
Okay, read Deuteronomy 28 sometime and tell me that's a loving God. Like one of the punishments that he proclaims for Israel if they disobey him is that you will become betrothed to a woman, and then someone else will rape her. So, like, is that a loving God that will have your fiance raped as a punishment for you?
Okay, could I comment?
Yeah.
Okay. I cannot specifically comment on one verse. I actually could, but it would be futile.
So you're just going to cherry pick that. So God is the God that you decided on without the Bible, and then the parts of the Bible that you agree with, you say that's the God that you believe in, but then you discard the ones you don't.
Jeremiah, you had an epiphany, but it's flawed. You at some point realized, and you said this, that you couldn't interpret and understand the Bible on your own. And then later you found a verse that says, when you love God, the Bible will be made clear. And then afterwards you said, you concluded that's what must have happened. Well, I'm sorry. I'm happy to inform you actually that when you reach the conclusion, that's what must have happened. That is a logical fallacy on your part. You cannot conclude that your new understanding is in fact a correct understanding from God. That is a fallacy. So what you need to do is show how. I need to know what your God is, because it's not the God of the Bible. Because if your God, the only thing you've defined about your God is that he's kind and wonderful and honest, but the God of the Bible is not necessarily kind and wonderful and honest, doesn't care about equality, is fine with slavery, endorses slavery, doesn't have men and women being equal, does not provide evidence for his existence, left you to flounder this whole time. You have invented a God out of whole cloth based on your own understanding of the Bible. How do you prove that God is real?
Come on, Jeremiah, jump in.
I get to talk now?
Oh, okay.
I asked a question. Normally after a question,
comment.
that's your time to respond.
Okay, because I was trying to respond to the other questions that you were bringing up, because someone mentioned cherry picking verses. I don't do that because I just picked one to show you the overarching theme that I saw in the entire.
And I showed you a verse that disagrees with that overarching theme. How do you reconcile the two?
Go on, Jeremiah.
Okay, I can reconcile that. You chose a verse that specifically condemns something and gives some kind of punishment, I believe.
No, God is proclaiming what he is going to do to Israel for disobeying him. It's a whole long list. I just picked one thing out of it. It is a long list of horrible, horrible, horrible things that he is going to do to the nation of Israel for disobeying him. There's things like force you to eat your children. There's send you back to Egypt to be slaves. He actually, the last verse of that chapter says that I know I promised you that I would never send you back to Egypt to be slaves, but I'm going to send you back to Egypt to be slaves. So right there, God doesn't keep his promises. He says so himself. I can't read that chapter and come away with a picture of a loving God. And you can show me all the verses you want that say God is love, God loves people, God wants you to love your neighbor. You can show me all those verses, but that doesn't square with a laundry list of things that he's going to do that are heinous, immoral things that he is saying that he is going to do. This isn't him telling other people what is just happening. This is him saying, I am going to do this.
Yes,
Jeremiah.
I can't disagree with you on all those things, but in my opinion, those things are coming from a misinterpretation of the Bible. And
No.
It says it flat out.
Set all of that aside, because now you're saying that God reveals the Bible to you, that you couldn't understand it on your own, but you're telling us that everything else that we're going to bring up that doesn't fit your narrative is a misinterpretation of the Bible. I'm going to ask this one time, and we're going to try it, and then we're going to move on.
I think Jeremiah.
Prove that your God exists.
Okay. If my God is honesty exists.
Oh, God.
No, honesty does not exist.
If my God is kindness,
Honesty is an abstract concept that evaluates whether or not a particular statement is accurate with respect to reality. You don't get to say that your God is an abstract concept. I mean, you can say that, but your God is now useless, and it's not the God of the Bible, and that is one of the most dishonest attempts to define a God into existence. It's absolute pablum garbage.
okay.
Yeah, it is okay, Jeremiah. You need to go now. That was ridiculous. I think Jeremiah was on. a week or two ago, because this ridiculous argument I've heard used before, and my memory is, with the same voice, absolutely rubbish. So you could pick basically any emotion you like and say, my God is this, my God is love, and because love exists, therefore my God exists. But what a rubbish argument from someone who is pretending to be serious about it.
See.
Okay.
See, if you're going to demonstrate that a God exists, you can't just say, my God is honesty and honesty exists. Because first of all, honesty does not exist as a thing. Honesty is an abstract concept. You might as well have said God is love and love exists. Well, kudos to you. That's
God
not
is
the
this
God of
foam,
the Bible.
piece of foam, and this piece of foam exists.
Yep.
My
I got
God
a
is
cup
more,
here that
more
changes
concrete than
colors.
yours.
This cup changes colors based on temperatures. Is infinitely more powerful and impressive than any God you've proposed and any God anybody else has proposed. But if you're going to demonstrate that something exists, you can't just do well, my God is this, and that abstract concept exists. That's cheating. That's not a defense of God. That's playing around with words, and it's an admission of defeat. What did God do in the Bible to prove to Pharaoh that he was real? Did he have Moses show up and say, hey, my God is a God of honesty, and honesty exists? Is that what God did with Moses to Pharaoh?
Jeremiah, chip in.
Did those things actually happen? Are they accurate?
No, I don't think any of these things happened. I don't think it's historically accurate. But I was asking a question because you're the one advocating for the God of the Bible. In the Bible, what did God do to have Moses do to show Pharaoh he was real? Did he pull some wordplay bullshit out, or did he do some magic tricks and plagues?
Well, I don't believe those things were accurately historical or historical.
Wow. So I tell you what, Jeremiah, I'm just going to let you go because here's why. It doesn't matter whether or not you think those things are historical. I don't think they're historical either. What I'm talking about is not what actually happened in the Bible. I'm talking about how to go about demonstrating that a God exists. If you had come with something like magic, okay, that'd be impressive. If you had come with something like evidence, that would be impressive. But when you come with, my God is honesty and honesty exists, now I know you are not taking this seriously. And I took it seriously.
I'm going to ask you a question. You said something about magic. What does that mean exactly?
So I would argue that turning a stick into a snake and a plague and those things, I label those magics, miracles that go beyond the natural. Yeah, that's kind of what we're talking about.
Uh-huh. That's correct. And those things happened in the Bible, didn't they?
There's the story. The stories are there. I don't think they happened. You don't think they happened. I don't.
But let's say they did happen. What does the Bible continue to say happened after they happened?
I don't. So why it's like you didn't listen to a thing I said. It's your job to defend. It's your job to defend the God that you believe in. And I'm telling you, wordplay isn't going to do it. Do you have any evidence for your God? Do you have any evidence for your God?
Things to think about.
Do you have, I don't need you to give me shit to think about. I think all the time. I've thought through this stuff vastly more than you have. Do you have evidence for your God?
Yes.
What is it?
Okay, I'm just pausing there because I feel that we should have a drum roll here, because I've got a feeling that this is going to be such a letdown. It's going to be a come on, give us the evidence, and then it's going to be wah, wah, wah. Let's see it. Let's see whether this is actually going to work.
Yes.
What is it?
It's going to annoy Matt.
It's something you can't see because you don't know me. If you knew me 4 years ago and you knew me now, you would
Jeremiah, do you have evidence that you can present to any other human being? Do you have evidence that you can present to us that demonstrates the truth of the proposition that your God exists? Yes or no?
You want evidence of a spiritual being in
That was a yes or no question. Do you have evidence that you can present to us that confirms the existence of your God?
evidence you want? No.
Bye.
Okay. Well, stop there then.
Thanks for wasting my time.
Limb, and you have documentation of that, and
Yeah.
now you have all your limbs.
I'm just going to try and move forward a little
That
bit.
would be a good about all that out. No gods exist. And actually that wouldn't be enough because what
Jesus Christ, Father, Son, Holy Spirit.
Sorry.
Okay.
You know, I'm impressed that he was able to get through it without stumbling over his words, because I would have had to practice that for a bit before getting it all out.
But hey, we got other people here. So we have someone, whoops, I clicked to talk. It's not, there we go. We have someone going by the name of Skeptic here, wants to talk about why he believes in God. So welcome, Skeptic.
Yeah, your question is why I believe in God, right?
Oh, no.
Well, I would like to know what God you believe in and why, but yes.
On the video.
No,
Well, I
she's
believe,
so not gonna
well,
go
I
well.
believe in Jesus Christ, Father, Son, Holy Spirit.
Okay, well, that's, sure, why?
Because there's a giant snake circling the earth, and atheists go inside of there.
Yeah, move on.
Nice,
So you can.
nice. There's a giant snake circling the earth and atheists go inside of it. Congratulations on your Baba Booey. Well done. I'm glad we kept you on hold for nearly an hour so that you could.
Was it worth it?
You know, if you managed to get a clip out. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. How dare you call in and prank call our show? Is this the angry face that you imagined you were going to get? Oh, I'm really going to stick it to those atheists when really you just made yourself look like a complete goober again, because you've done that before.
Yeah, I thought that sounded
I'm not
familiar.
going to say that I spotted that instantly.
We have MJ in New York. Thank you so much for calling. You wanted to introduce a case for Judaism and an evidence for God. So awesome. Thanks.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, I can. I have evidence for Judaism. The thing with it is that there are many pieces of evidence for Judaism, and one piece of evidence alone is not going to prove it. So, like, if you have an email address in which I can send you the information, like I cannot prove it to you.
Not
in
needed.
Just one
MJ.
phone call.
MJ, did you just call the show and talk to the call screeners and sit there on hold just so you could get the email address that's publicly available? How'd you find the phone number and not the email address? It's tv@atheist-community.org. But the whole point is this is a call-in show. Are you going to present your case or not?
I think he might say no.
I want to present the case, like, so where can I find the email address again?
Oh my God.
Never mind.
Information.
Click rewind. I don't sit here and spend my time just to tell you what email address you can do eventually. This is a call-in show where you were supposed to call in. Go rewind and you can find the address that I already gave you. All right.
That was terrible. What is it with
Daniel
people?
in Washington. How you doing? And welcome to the show. You're on with Vice Rhino and Matt.
Daniel, traveling tonight on a plane.
Portland, Oregon.
Oh, okay.
Huh?
I'm sorry. It says Washington on here. So.
I said Portland. How you doing?
Well, you're the only caller on hold right now, so I'm wondering if there was a problem with call-in studio or whatever, but that's all right because I'm happy to talk to you. What do you got for us?
Well, I just got a case. Well, my case is that the Gospels have been most likely written earlier than 50 years after Jesus does. And the way...
The earliest one is about 30 years after, so that would be earlier than 50, I suppose.
Yes, and the way I look at it is the Book of Acts. yeah, we don't know who wrote it. We don't know who wrote the Gospels.
No.
It was Mark. Look, yeah, I agree with that. There's no author written. But if we go forward to 70 A.D., when Jerusalem was
when the temple was destroyed and Jerusalem was besieged.
It was siege. And when
Daniel's coming over is quite nervous.
When Paul was executed, we don't have any of that information in the Book of Acts. But on the other hand, we have information when Jews were exterminated from Rome. We have information when there was a great famine. We know information.
Okay, what's
Daniel,
the point?
Daniel, I'm confused. So, I don't really have that much of a position on when Gospels were written. I tend to go with what the bulk of Christian scholars say. As a matter of fact, one of my favorite websites, which discusses this stuff, is not an atheist website at all. It's earlychristianwritings.com. And so if you pull up earlychristianwritings.com right now, are you trying to say that you think the dates there are wrong?
Who? Can you repeat the name?
It's
earlychristianwritings.com.
Like, are you calling in to disagree with the scholarly consensus about the dates of the various Gospels?
Yeah, I disagree.
Well,
okay.
So
what is your reason?
My position is.
Hang on.
Yeah, hang on. When people call in and they wanted, if somebody calls in and they want to say that they think that the theory of evolution is wrong and that they've got an alternative explanation with whatever, okay, don't say that, with whatever ideas they've got, don't talk to Matt about it. He's not a biologist. Talk to some biologists and they'll probably put you right. If you're going to argue with Christian scholars about when the Gospels were written, etc., then so what? Why? The game Chinese whispers sometimes is when people talk and they pass on a message around a table, and in that small period of time, sometimes people deliberately change the word, but sometimes it just, you mishear it and it changes like sort of naturally without being deliberate, and that's information being passed on from like seconds ago to maybe 10 people, 12 people. We're talking about something that alleged to have happened, and then people passed on knowledge about it verbally, and it was actually written down in bits 30 to 70 years later. So if I said to whoever's listening, however old you are, can you remember your 10th birthday party? Can you remember when you were 10? Now for me that's a million years ago. Can you remember enough to write down the details of what happened on your 10th birthday party? Well, for some people watching this, that might have only been 8 years ago. And you probably couldn't do it. The idea, and that's about you. That's you talking about you. This is not. This is the idea that 30 to 70 years later, through talk to passed on, somehow you could write something down that would have merit. It's that, frankly, the idea is ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. And anybody that says, oh well, it was like a tradition, a verbal tradition, that's bullshit as well, because there was a tradition of passing on information through the use of studies, but we know they change. Even in that tradition they change. It's just it's slightly crazy. It is really irritating because it just doesn't hold water, basically.
It's about the date.
Oh, and can I just say, the Bible, if you wrote the Bible now with so much of it that's so anti race, it's anti-sex, it's anti-LBG, etc. It's anti-everything. It's like a fantastic book full of ists, chauvinistic, sexist, etc., etc. It's just, you couldn't write that book now and get away with it. And in this ridiculous world that we have of cancel culture at the moment, where everybody's looking back and they're trying to link lots and lots of things that have happened in the past to the position those people or those books or those statues are in now, and tearing them down. Who's tearing down the Bible? Where are all these people tearing down this ridiculous book that is basically so anti-female, anti-human rights? Nobody. Somehow religion gets a pass.
It's
earlychristianwritings.com.
Very frustrating.
Like, are you calling in to disagree with the scholarly consensus about the dates of the various gospels?
Yeah, I disagree.
Okay. So
what is your reason?
My position is...
Hang on.
Well...
No, hang on.
Daniel, shut up.
Why would you call an atheist show that has no historians or New Testament scholars on it to tell us that you disagree with Christians about when the gospel was written? You disagree with the bulk of scholarship. Why on earth would you call to tell us that you don't agree with the bulk of the best scholarship? What are we supposed to do about it? And what difference does it make?
Yeah, I'm going to get to my point. If we establish that gospel was written, let's say 45, first gospel of Mark, 45, that's 10 years after Jesus' death. You can go, or you can come and see those people that have...
Okay, but no, like there are no serious scholars that think that Mark was written that early. So, I'm not sure.
You might as well be saying if we had Jesus's own handwriting and DNA, we would have no more questions left. If frogs had wings, they wouldn't bump their ass a hopping. If I asked you what, yes, I agree with you. Well, I don't actually agree with you, because I think a decade is still a long time, and a decade is a longer time back in first century, Judea, where you don't. A decade's different now. And yet a decade would be a long time to try to ask somebody to go back. I couldn't tell you what I did on this show 10 years ago, let alone what I did in life 10 years ago. But you're saying that you reject the bulk of scholarship on the dating. I don't care. Who the hell are you, and what evidence do you have, and what difference does it make?
It'd be nice to know what his qualifications are.
Aren't you taking this to the scholars? Why are you calling an atheist show to tell us how you don't agree with the bulk of scholarship on the dating of the Gospels? What the hell are we supposed to do about it? I genuinely don't give a fuck.
Sir, with all due respect, I just wanted to share I go off Warner Wallace. He's a detective. He has been doing...
and he's not a scholar, and he holds a minority.
Why won't you answer my question? Why are you calling us?
Well, my apologies if that doesn't persuade you in any way.
Of what?
I called you because I'm trying to be a good Christian, sir. And
are you really? Are you trying to be a good Christian by saying that you reject the bulk of Christian scholarship on dating? Is it a good Christian thing to do for you to reject the bulk of scholarship and to call into atheists? What is a good Christian? What about that makes you a good Christian, Daniel?
I do work.
Like Gary Habermas, who is a Christian scholar, disagrees with you. He's one of the fundamentalists. Well, maybe not fundamentalists, but like he holds a lot of positions that secular scholarship would reject, but he disagrees with you about the authorship of like when the books were written. Now, I find the subject fascinating personally. Like I would be happy to talk to you about it at some point, but like this isn't really the purpose of this show. I would recommend maybe I would recommend maybe reading Bart Ehrman's book, Lost Christianities, and he talks about how there is evidence of a bazillion different Christian sects who believed all sorts of different things that were so different from each other that they would make a Catholic and a Protestant look like the same denomination by comparison. And all of these sects existed before any of the Gospels were written. Like a lot of the writing of the New Testament is Paul talking about how you can't believe all these different Christians that are teaching things that I'm not teaching. Like that's in the New Testament. And these are people that existed like before any of the Gospels were written.
When I
so
say
it doesn't matter how early you get it, it's still later than Paul, and there were still a bazillion other Christian sects.
Yeah, when I say I don't give a fuck, I'm genuinely curious and interested in the subject, which is why I'm able to produce websites with information off the top of my head, like earlychristianwritings.com. My question was specifically for Daniel. What the hell is it that you think makes you a good Christian to call into an atheist show to say you don't agree with the dating and you think it's earlier than any good scholar on the planet? What difference does that make? Because let's say I granted you, Daniel. Let's say I'm willing to say all 4 Gospels were written 3 days after the events. Let's say I'm willing to grant that. Does that prove any of it's true?
But we can make inference.
Does that prove any of it's true?
I said to the screener, I am inferring.
Sir, I don't give a shit about inference. That's another thing. Why would you think that would be a good thing?
And you can hang up on me, sir. Then you can hang up, and we can end this call if it's not going to go anywhere.
Okay, I did. See, I said to the screener I was making an inference. Well, what you really mean is you have an idea that is not consistent with the best scholarship. Great. As an atheist, I'd like to make sure that the show is staying close to the best scholarship that I can. Because if I start doing a show where I start using dates that are ridiculous, you know, let's assume that I do the same thing Daniel does, but I go the other direction. So instead of moving,
and that's what the promise said. Both reason for it. So there's
another one.
Right.
The best scholarship that I can.
Sorry.
Because mark from around 7, honest argument. I guess you've got. Are you another Jesus believer who's going to tell us why?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Thank
I just wanted to check in. I know I used to be an atheist, but I came back to Jesus mainly to Christianity because of Jesus alone. And I understand as a skeptic, you have to have a reason for it. So the reason is.
I'm sorry, Bill. I promise I'm not trying to interrupt you. I just didn't hear what you said. You said you came back to Jesus because what?
Because of Jesus and his claim. So for that reason. You have to have a reason for it, because as a skeptic, you're right. I mean, the Bible basically says we're dirt, and if you want to believe that we're more than dirt, you got to have a good reason. And the reason I have is the promise of Abraham and Isaac. It's a prediction, and I understand that it's going to have some selection bias, but I do think it's valid to consider why there's 2 billion plus people who refer.
Why do we need a promise through ancient Hebrews to be more than dirt? Like, why can't we be more than dirt because we are conscious beings who have experiences and emotions and empathy?
Because of Darwin. If you're going to claim,
that have to do with anything.
And believe in Darwin.
That's Darwin back there.
Yeah, so
what's he doing to stop me from being?
You believe in Jesus because there's got to be some reason why there's a couple billion Christians, but why are there 1.8 billion Muslims?
They're all referring back to Abraham. And that's what the promise said, both Ishmael. So you can say they're all claiming that, and I totally agree with that. But there are several billion people, and we're still having this discussion 2,000 years later regarding Jesus.
Yeah, but back in, like, it wasn't all that long ago that people believed the Earth was the center of the universe. And the majority of people at the time believed that.
Yeah.
Why should we go with the majority just because it's the majority? That's not a good reason to make a decision.
And if Christianity's popularity falls to the point where non-belief is the majority, does that mean that we're right?
No, I totally agree. Majority.
Well, no. You see, you can't say you totally agree because you just basically said that you became a Christian again because it's popular.
I said I considered it again because it's a claim that's made by a tiny little people that came true. And
well, what's the claim? What's the claim that was made by a tiny little people that came true?
the claim to Abraham is that you and your descendants would eventually become as numerous as grains in the sand, and that your people would be a light unto the world.
No, people are not as numerous as grains of sand, and Jews are the descendants of Abraham, and they're definitely not as numerous as the grains of sand.
It also, a part of that promise is that they would become greater than the stars of heaven. That, like, no matter what you can say about the grains of sand, for sure that hasn't happened with the stars of heaven. Like,
well, that's only if you're going to accept everything else. And I am not someone who believes that the Bible is the inherent dictated word of God. I believe.
So then why should we make live our lives around a book that you don't think is the inerrant word of God? And like, why should we trust this promise but not something else? Like, why are there bits and pieces that you get to pick and choose?
Well, you do have to. You pick and choose based. And you have to minimize the claims, and that's Jesus is saying, I'm a spiritual solution to a material problem, and you either accept it or reject it, and that's exactly what Jesus said.
Okay, so why should anybody accept it? Because I have no evidence that Jesus ever said anything, let alone I don't have evidence that anything Jesus said was true.
You accept the inspired word the way it is, and then you look at it and say whether it makes sense or not.
No.
The way it is, it doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense. And do you care whether or not it's true? Because why don't you accept other things that other people said from other religions?
Mainly because of the claim that, again, for me, it's through Darwin, because...
what the hell does Darwin have to do?
How did Darwin prove Christianity and disprove all the other religions?
Because if you believe in Darwin, and I actually accept it totally, then the world is limited.
No, Bill. What the fuck do you mean believe in Darwin? I don't believe in Darwin.
Do you believe that his theory is accurate?
Do I accept the
not
science?
the version that he presented?
Do I accept the science that the theory of evolution by means of natural selection is the most accurate model to explain biodiversity on the planet? Yes, I do.
But the way Darwin presented it was a very limited, rudimentary version of it, because like he's not some prophet of evolutionism. This isn't a religion where Darwin is our savior or whatever. It's like he was just a guy that made a discovery, and we have built upon this discovery. So like, who cares what Darwin believed? Darwin believed that cells were a gelatinous blob that released their, like, he didn't even know what genetic material was, but like his whole idea about the mechanism behind how traits are passed on between parents and their children was completely wrong. And we don't teach that method in schools because it's completely wrong. So like, who cares about Darwin? Darwin has nothing to do with everything. If you have a problem with evolution by natural selection, talking about Darwin this and Darwin that, it doesn't matter. He was just the first guy to write the book about it, and not even all the ideas were originally his. He was building on other people, as is so often the case in science.
But I still don't know what this has to do with Jesus. So get us there, Bill. Bring us home.
Good. I think Darwin is a materialist theory, and you could, and evolution is based on, it has to be totally materialist, natural.
No, it doesn't.
Bill,
talk to Francis Collins sometime.
Yeah, you do realize that Catholics accept evolution, and that many Protestants accept evolution, including the former head of the Human Genome Project that Vice just mentioned, Francis Collins. So are you saying that those people aren't real believers?
Like, Francis Collins runs a website dedicated to harmonizing the Bible with science because he believes in the Bible.
But in any case, if your reason for believing in Jesus is because you don't believe evolution, then why should anybody pay any attention to you? Because clearly you don't understand and don't care about science or the truth.
I do believe in evolution. That's why I believe in Jesus. It's exactly the opposite of what you just said.
So why are you bringing up Darwin then? I don't understand what your goal is here.
Evolutionary theory. The goal is to say that Jesus made a statement that if there are two realities in this world, One is spiritual, one is natural. You either believe it or you don't. And
okay, I don't, and I'm done wasting time with this. Goodbye. You either believe it or you don't. Well, congratulations. I've only been doing a show, 500 episodes of a show for over 16 years, hoping that one of you would come in and actually defend something with something stronger than you either believe it or you don't. I mean, my apologies to Vice Rhino, because I genuinely hoped we were going to get somewhere. I didn't think we were going to get to God, but I thought we were going to get to like a cogent argument. Or somebody presenting something other than just, you either believe it or you don't. Well, thank you for your tautology. I don't get it.
So many of those calls had the potential to go to interesting places.
Yeah, I'm not convinced.
Or they're on the verge of anything and they never get there.
Well, it was a pleasure edging with you, Matt.
Thank you. I enjoyed edging with you too, Vice. And we'll get you back on. Tell everybody where they can find you real quick, and then I'll sign us out of here.
I'm on Twitter at Vice Rhino, YouTube channel Vice Rhino. They've got my Linktree link up there. All the relevant links are there. Got podcast, Patreon, all that stuff. I'm easy to find. You type Vice Rhino into Google, you'll find something about me.
On that note, I want to thank everybody, first of all, for tuning in, and for the people who called, yes, including the people that I wound up hanging up on or whatever else. Call back again, formulate your thoughts, go back and listen to the call and figure out where you think it went wrong, and then call in and talk about where you think it went wrong so that maybe we can correct it. But most importantly, huge thank you to all the call screeners, mods, and the crew who make this show possible. Put yourselves up there on the screen. Look at them all waving and stuff, except for that one guy right there. That Johnny P. Angel guy, don't trust him. But anyway, we appreciate everybody. Click like, click subscribe, donate if you can, but by all means, spread the word and get the word out so that maybe your relatives can call in, maybe your relatives' pastors can call in, maybe some apologist you know can call in, maybe even Eric Hovind could call in. And by the way, put a big thumbs up for Vice Rhino so we can get him back on the show sometime. Take care of yourself. Be safe. We'll see you next week.
I'm just going to pause that then and say thanks for listening. If you want to make any comments, then shove it in the post when it goes up, which should be pretty soon, like tomorrow morning. And look after yourself, stay safe. If you get the opportunity to get vaccinated, because you're not, then get vaccinated. Look after people, and especially your parents, and I will hopefully see you next time. Take care.